General Alexander Gray stood at the front of the conference room, his sharp eyes fixed on the holographic display of the alien fleet that loomed above the Earth. The diplomats and military officers gathered around him, watching intently, their faces tense with anticipation. He could sense their anxiety, but the general remained composed as always. For decades, humanity had struggled to maintain peace on Earth, contending with internal conflicts, resource shortages, and the occasional rogue nation. Yet none of those challenges prepared them for what was coming next. The Galactic Empire, a vast, unchallenged force that had dominated the galaxy for centuries, had set its sights on Earth. "They don't respect us," Gray muttered, half to himself. "They never will." "General," Lieutenant Josh Cole spoke up, his voice filled with frustration. "We've tried diplomacy, but they see us as nothing more than ants. They don't even acknowledge us as a threat." Gray's gaze shifted to Cole, the young officer's eyes burning with a fiery resolve. Cole was an exceptional fighter, a soldier who thrived in combat. Yet his quick temper often led him to overstep his bounds. He was impulsive, but his heart was in the right place. "You're right, Lieutenant," Gray said, "but this is bigger than any one of us. It's about the survival of our people." The room fell silent as the reality of their situation began to settle in. They had sent emissaries to the Galactic Empire, hoping to avoid conflict. They had sent their best negotiators, the brightest minds Earth had to offer, to secure peace. But the response from the aliens was swift, dismissive, and cruel. The aliens had no interest in peaceful coexistence. To them, Earth was a primitive backwater, a planet unworthy of attention. And so, they had chosen to take a more direct approach. Gray knew the moment was coming. The Galactic Empire had always crushed rebellions with ease, extinguishing any trace of resistance in the blink of an eye. And now, it was Earth's turn to be crushed. They had abducted several high-ranking officers from Earth, including Gray himself, and taken them aboard a massive alien ship. As the transport vessel hurtled through the vacuum of space, Gray could feel the weight of his surroundings pressing in on him. The cold steel walls of the alien craft were unwelcoming, sterile. His mind raced as he calculated every possible move, trying to decipher what the aliens would do next. He had no illusions about his fate. He knew that once they arrived at their destination, the Empire would show no mercy. Cole paced nervously behind him, his fists clenched. "They're going to kill us, aren't they?" Gray didn't turn to face him. He didn't need to. He had always been the calm in the storm, the steady hand in the face of impossible odds. But there was something different in the air now, something electric. The alien ship, with its advanced technology and vast size, might have been the most intimidating thing Gray had ever faced, but he wasn't afraid. Not anymore. He had spent his life preparing for moments like this. "If they do," Gray said quietly, "we'll give them a reason to regret it." The door to the holding cell slid open with a hiss, and an alien officer entered, its towering form dwarfing Gray and Cole. Its translucent skin shimmered with an unnatural sheen, and its eyes glowed with a cold, otherworldly light. The creature regarded them with a mixture of disdain and amusement, as if they were nothing more than insects to be crushed beneath its heel. "You are human?" the alien asked in a voice that sent a chill down Gray's spine. "Last time I checked," Gray responded, his tone flat. The alien's lips curled into something that might have been a smile. "How quaint," it said, its voice dripping with sarcasm. "Your kind is nothing but a speck in the grand tapestry of the galaxy. Yet here you are, defying the inevitable." Gray didn't flinch. He had faced down enemies on the battlefield, but this was something else entirely. This was a confrontation with a power that was ancient, vast, and seemingly unstoppable. And yet, he refused to back down. "You're making a mistake," Gray said evenly. "You think we're just another weak species to be eradicated. But you've underestimated humanity. And that's something you'll regret." The alien officer leaned closer, its eyes narrowing. "I think you overestimate your worth. Earth is a primitive planet, and your species is inconsequential in the greater scheme of things. You have no power here." Gray's heart pounded, but he kept his voice steady. "You're wrong. You're making a fatal mistake." The alien chuckled darkly. "Your threats are meaningless. There is no force in the galaxy that can challenge us. Prepare to die." It was then that Gray realized something crucial. The alien did not understand. The Empire had always crushed every enemy that had ever dared challenge it. It had never fought an opponent like humanity. "You're right about one thing," Gray said. "You've never fought someone like us. We don't surrender. We don't beg for mercy. And we never forget." As the alien turned to leave, Gray's mind was already racing. This was it. The moment he had feared. They would be executed, forgotten in the vastness of space. But that wasn't going to be the end. Not for him. Not for Earth. The door to their cell slammed shut, but Gray didn't feel defeated. He was already plotting. He had a plan. One that would turn the tables on the Empire and show them the true power of humanity. It wasn't just about strength. It was about willpower, ingenuity, and a relentless desire to survive. These were the things that would carry them through. "Let them think we're helpless," Gray muttered under his breath, a fire igniting in his chest. "They'll learn soon enough." Cole glanced at him, seeing the resolve in the general's eyes. "What do we do now, sir?" Gray turned to him, a faint smile crossing his face. "Now we fight." And as the ship drifted toward the heart of the alien empire, General Alexander Gray knew one thing for certain. Earth would not be defeated. Not now. Not ever. The alien ship had landed on a barren world, a remote outpost within the Empire's vast territory. General Alexander Gray stood at the edge of a broken-down building, the wind howling across the desolate plains. His fingers grazed the cool metal of the walls, his mind far from the present surroundings. They had escaped the alien ship, but their situation was far from secure. This was no ordinary retreat. It was their last hope. Beside him stood Lieutenant Josh Cole, his stance brimming with impatience. His hands were clenched at his sides, fingers tightening around the hilt of his rifle, his eyes scanning the horizon. The tension between them was palpable, the unspoken conflict between Gray's calm, methodical approach and Cole's quick-tempered drive threatening to boil over. "How long do we wait, generals?" Cole's voice cracked with barely suppressed frustration. "They're coming for us. We should take the fight to them now." Dr. William McAllister, the eccentric scientist who had been caught in the alien ship's wake, walked over to them, his goggles perched on his head like a permanent fixture. His wild hair, slightly singed from earlier experiments, framed his face in a mess of chaotic curls. McAllister was the odd man out among the soldiers. His brilliance was undeniable, but his disregard for conventional rules and social norms often placed him at odds with the rest of the team. "General, I've been working on some devices," McAllister began, his voice tinged with excitement. "Nothing lethal. Well, nothing too lethal, but it should give us an edge. We can use guerrilla tactics, sabotage their technology. I've had some success with disrupting their comms. We can keep them off balance, create chaos." Gray turned to McAllister, his expression thoughtful. "Good. We'll need every advantage we can get. How long before you can put something together?" McAllister's eyes sparkled with a gleam of madness. "Give me 2 days. I'll need to scavenge more parts from the wreckage of the alien ship and the outpost. But by then, we'll be ready to make some noise." 2 days, Gray repeated, his mind already working through the logistics. "We'll use that time to recruit. We need a fighting force." Cole raised an eyebrow. "Recruit? From where? The rebels on this planet? They're a scattered bunch, hiding from the Empire. They got nothing. They have more than you think," Gray said, his tone firm. "They've got the same thing we do, a will to survive. They just need someone to show them how to fight back." That was the first step. Over the next 2 days, Gray, Cole, and McAllister scoured the desolate world for any sign of life. They found small groups of desperate survivors. Humans, mostly, though there were a few scattered alien species among them, the remnants of a world crushed under the Empire's heel. These survivors were wary, distrustful, and unwilling to join a fight they felt was already lost. But Gray had never been one to shy away from a challenge. His calm demeanor, his unwavering conviction, and his promises of a brighter future slowly won them over. He spoke of Earth, not just as a planet, but as a symbol of resilience, of defiance, and of survival. And when he mentioned the Empire's cruelty, their unprovoked attacks on innocent worlds, something stirred in the hearts of the survivors. They began to listen. One by one, they began to join. Josh Cole, ever the fighter, rallied the troops. His fierce loyalty to Gray and his desire to prove himself drove him to inspire the recruits. "We've got no choice," Cole would say, his voice rough and commanding. "We either fight or die. If you want to survive, you'll fight. If you want to win, you'll fight with me." His words resonated with the survivors, especially the more battle-hardened among them. These were men and women who had seen the worst of the galaxy and had lived to tell the tale. They weren't eager for a fight, but they knew better than to remain passive. Cole's words were a lifeline. McAllister, on the other hand, worked tirelessly in the background. He created crude but effective weapons, rigged together from salvaged alien technology and the tools they could scrounge. He designed explosive devices, signal jammers, and even improvised armor. McAllister was the heart of their rebellion, even if he didn't look the part. His brilliance lay in his ability to adapt and innovate under pressure, making the most out of the few resources they had. The days passed quickly, the camp growing steadily with each passing hour. By the end of the second day, Gray had assembled a ragtag group of soldiers, outcasts, and revolutionaries, each with their own reasons for joining the fight. There was Lieutenant David Marks, a former Special Forces officer, hardened and scarred from years of warfare. There was Sergeant Raymond Harris, a grizzled veteran with a sharp mind for tactics and an unmatched skill in close-quarters combat. And there was Dr. McAllister, the genius who had once been thought of as nothing more than an eccentric scientist, now regarded as a key player in the resistance. On the morning of the third day, Gray gathered them together. He stood before them, his expression grim but resolute. "The Empire is ruthless. They will not show mercy. They will not stop until every last one of us is dead or enslaved. But we will make them pay. We will show them that humanity has a fighting spirit they cannot extinguish." Cole stood beside him, his fists clenched. "We've got the will. Now let's make them feel it." McAllister, never one for speeches, adjusted his goggles and nodded enthusiastically. Time to put theory into practice. With their forces ready, Gray laid out his strategy. The first target was a nearby Imperial supply line. It wasn't much, just a small convoy of alien transports, but it was enough to make a statement. A series of hit-and-run attacks, guerrilla warfare, designed to confuse and frustrate the Empire. They would make the Empire chase shadows, exhaust their resources, and question their assumptions. And it worked. The attack was swift and brutal. The convoy didn't know what hit them. McAllister's jammers disabled their communications. Cole's team struck from the shadows, and Gray coordinated the chaos from a distance, using every resource at his disposal to ensure the mission's success. By the time the Empire launched a counterattack, they were already gone, leaving nothing but the scorched remnants of their first victory. It wasn't enough to defeat the Empire, but it was a message. It was the beginning. As Gray and his team watched the smoke rise in the distance, Cole turned to him, a grin spreading across his face. "You were right, General. We've just started something." Gray didn't smile. "We've started a war, but it's one we're going to win." The rebellion was no longer just an idea. It was a movement, and the fight had only just begun. The sun had barely risen over the rebel encampment when General Alexander Gray convened his commanders. The days of running, hiding, and small skirmishes were over. Now, it was time to strike at the heart of the Empire. Gray stood tall, his expression unreadable as he surveyed the men and women before him. Each one had proven themselves in the past few weeks, through firefights and sabotage, through risks and near-death encounters. They had come together under his leadership and the banner of human survival, and now it was time to escalate the war. "Today, we move," Gray began, his voice calm, but laced with the quiet intensity that his men had come to expect. "We've been striking at the edges of their empire, chipping away. Now we show them that humanity is no longer a fringe threat. We're going to hit them where it hurts." Lieutenant Josh Cole, standing to his right, nodded eagerly, his jaw set in determination. "I've been waiting for this. We've kept the pressure on, and now we push them harder. No more hiding in the shadows." Gray turned his gaze to the map laid out before them, his fingers tracing the lines of the Empire's supply routes. They had intercepted communications that suggested a vital Imperial fleet was being resupplied at a central depot not far from their position. If they could cripple this supply line, the Empire's war effort in the sector would come to a grinding halt. We'll take this depot. Quiet, quick, and hard. We use their own methods against them. Guerrilla tactics. Surprise. The Empire won't know what hit them. Cole's eyes gleamed with excitement. He had always been a soldier at heart, a man of action. The theory and strategy of warfare had never appealed to him as much as the thrill of battle. But even he knew that Gray's methods, while unorthodox, were proving effective. Meanwhile, Dr. William McAllister, who had been pacing in the background, stepped forward, his face a mixture of concern and curiosity. "General, I've modified the interference tech we used in our last attack. It should work even better this time. I've also designed a few surprises for the Imperial fleet, things that'll make them question their superiority. But it's all experimental, and I can't guarantee they'll work perfectly." Gray nodded, trusting McAllister's genius. The scientist had become an invaluable asset to their cause, his inventions often turning the tide in their favor. "I trust you, Doctor. You've earned your place here. Just make sure your surprises are as deadly as you promise." With the plan set, the ragtag group of soldiers, engineers, and rebels moved out under the cover of nightfall. They made their way toward the Imperial Depot, a heavily fortified installation nestled in the heart of an abandoned city on a nearby planet. The Empire had overlooked the importance of this region, assuming the planet's desolate nature made it an easy target for control. But to Gray, it was the perfect place for an ambush. The rebel force, a motley crew of humans and a few alien outcasts, moved in silence, like ghosts in the night. Cole led the charge, his tactical mind and aggression driving him to the forefront. Gray followed, calm and calculating, always aware of the bigger picture. They were not just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for the future. As they neared the depot, McAllister activated his latest device. A field of jamming energy descended over the area, cutting off the Empire's communication lines. The lights of the Imperial facility flickered, and the guards grew increasingly uneasy. They couldn't communicate with their comrades. They couldn't call for reinforcements. It was chaos. Then, without warning, Cole launched the first attack. Explosives set by McAllister detonated in precise locations, causing sections of the depot to collapse in on themselves. The force of the explosions sent shockwaves through the facility, and the Empire's soldiers scrambled for cover. But it was too late. The rebels had already infiltrated. Gray's team moved like a well-oiled machine. Marks and Harris, two of the more battle-hardened veterans, took charge of securing critical positions, using their experience to hold off the Imperial forces while the rest of the group advanced toward the Central Command Center. Gray watched them work, his mind constantly calculating the next move. As the battle raged on, it became clear that the tide was turning. The Empire, accustomed to overwhelming victories, was floundering. The rebels had caught them off guard, and the jamming technology McAllister had developed had rendered their communications useless. The soldiers who had once believed themselves invincible were now facing a new kind of warfare, one they didn't understand and couldn't predict. But there was no time to revel in the success. Gray's mind was already on the next phase of the attack. The Central Command was close, and with it, the heart of the Empire's operation in the sector. "Push forward," Gray ordered, his voice cutting through the chaos. "We take that command center, and we shut this operation down." Cole charged forward, his rifle raised, and the team followed closely behind. As they reached the command center, they encountered heavy resistance. The last line of defense was fierce, Imperial soldiers, who had finally rallied, desperate to hold their ground. But Gray had expected this. He knew the Empire would respond with everything they had. The firefight was brutal, but the rebels were relentless. Marks and Harris provided cover fire, keeping the Imperial soldiers pinned down, while McAllister worked quickly to hack into the facility's systems. The sound of blaster fire echoed through the halls as Gray and Cole moved deeper into the heart of the compound. "General, the gates are almost breached," McAllister shouted from the back. "Just a little longer." Gray's hand tightened around the grip of his weapon. The intensity of the moment flooded his senses, but his focus remained unwavering. He could feel the weight of their mission. This was no longer just an attack on an Imperial base. It was a symbol. It was a message to the galaxy that humanity was not to be underestimated. The final assault was swift. With a decisive push, Gray and his team breached the command center's main doors. Inside, a small group of high-ranking Imperial officers was attempting to regroup and coordinate a counteroffensive. They were no match for the combined fury of the human rebellion. Cole stormed into the room first, his rifle raised, and the Empire's officers surrendered without a fight. But Gray knew better than to trust their defeat as a final victory. He gave the order to secure the facility's control systems. The enemy's infrastructure, their vital military network, was dismantled in a matter of minutes. The rebels had struck at the Empire's core, and now they would pay the price. It was a resounding victory, one that would ripple across the galaxy and signal to every oppressed species that humanity was no longer a silent bystander in the galaxy's struggles. As Gray surveyed the wreckage of the command center, a sense of grim satisfaction settled over him. They had won this battle, but it was only one in a much larger war. Cole approached him, wiping sweat from his brow. "We did it, General. We actually did it." Gray gave a small nod. "This is just the beginning. The Empire will retaliate, but now they know we can strike. We've shown them what humanity is capable of." McAllister joined them, holding up a small data drive. "I've downloaded all their tactical data. This will give us an edge in future battles." Gray took the drive and looked at the team before him. The fire that burned in their eyes mirrored his own. They had faced the impossible and come out victorious. But the war was far from over. "Let's prepare for the next step. The Empire has underestimated us once. They won't make that mistake again." With a heavy heart but renewed determination, Gray turned toward the horizon. The war had turned, and humanity was no longer on the defensive. They were the hunters now, and the Empire would learn that the price of underestimating humanity was far greater than they could ever imagine. The final assault was imminent. General Alexander Gray stood atop a craggy hill, his eyes fixed on the Imperial fortress in the distance. It loomed over the planet like a dark monolith, its sheer size a reminder of the Empire's unshakable dominance. But today it was a symbol of something else, a target. The Empire had underestimated humanity's ability to rise, to organize, and to strike with precision and purpose. Today, that arrogance would cost them everything. Beside him, Lieutenant Josh Cole adjusted the straps on his armor, his expression set in grim determination. The battles they had fought together had brought them to this moment. The ragtag group of soldiers, scientists, and rebels who had started this war had become something more, a force that had driven the Empire back, piece by piece. But this was the final test. The Empire's strongest defenses were concentrated here, in the heart of their military command center. If they were to win this war, it had to end today. "General," Cole said, his voice low but steady, "this is it. We take that fortress, and we make them pay for everything they've done." Gray didn't look at him. His gaze remained fixed on the distant fortress, his mind already racing through the plan. "We don't just make them pay, Josh. We end it. Today." The rest of the team had already moved into position. McAllister was back at their base, monitoring the Empire's communications, ready to disable any reinforcements that might be on the way. Marks and Harris, seasoned veterans, led their squads to the flanks, prepared to create diversions and hold the line. They had all come a long way from the scattered, untrained rebels they had once been. Gray's role was clear. He would lead the final charge, directly at the heart of the Empire's defense. The enemy had no idea what was coming. The surprise would be their greatest advantage. This was not a battle of firepower. It was a battle of will. The silence of the moment felt deafening. For a brief second, Gray allowed himself to feel the weight of the choices he had made. His mission, his purpose, had evolved from survival to something more profound. He wasn't just fighting for Earth anymore. He was fighting for the future of the galaxy. The rebellion had given the oppressed a voice, a chance to resist. But now, it was up to him to see it through. The charge began. With a signal from Gray, the ground exploded with the sound of coordinated strikes. The Empire's outer defenses, while formidable, had been worn down by previous skirmishes. The rebels had learned their enemy's weaknesses, exploiting every flaw with ruthless precision. Explosions rocked the battlefield as their small, agile forces stormed the perimeter. For the first time, the Empire's soldiers hesitated. Josh Cole led the charge, his rifle raised high, a beacon of human ferocity. His every step was powered by rage, by a thirst for vengeance that had driven him through every battle. The Empire had taken everything from him: his family, his friends, his sense of peace. Now, he would take it back. His heart pounded in his chest, a rhythm matched only by the thunderous gunfire around him. "Let's go," he yelled, his voice a roar that echoed across the battlefield. "For humanity. For Earth." With that, the rebels surged forward, cutting through the first line of defense. The Empire's soldiers, caught off guard by the speed and ferocity of the attack, scrambled to regroup. But they were too late. Gray and his team had already penetrated deep into the fortress, pushing past the front lines with the relentlessness of a tidal wave. Gray moved with a calmness that belied the chaos surrounding him. His mind was sharp, every move calculated to ensure they maintained the initiative. He trusted his team implicitly. They had grown into a well-oiled machine, each member knowing their role, each member willing to die for the cause. But for all his planning, Gray knew the true test would come when they faced the heart of the Empire's command structure, their last line of defense. They reached the fortress's inner sanctum, a heavily guarded chamber where the Empire's leaders were coordinating the final stages of their campaign. This was the moment they had been waiting for. Gray's heart raced, but his focus never wavered. As he and his team breached the chamber doors, the Imperial officers inside looked up in shock. They had no idea who or what was coming for them. General Var, the ruthless leader of the Imperial forces, stood at the center of the room, flanked by his elite guards. He sneered as Gray and his team stormed in, his confidence unshaken by the sudden appearance of the humans. "You think you can stop the Empire?" Var's voice was like ice, his gaze cold and calculating. "You're nothing but insects beneath our feet." Gray's response was simple. He didn't speak. Instead, he gestured for his team to fan out, positioning them for the final confrontation. In that moment, Gray understood something that Var would never grasp. The Empire had always relied on their size, their technology, their overwhelming power. But humanity had something they could never replicate: determination, creativity, and an unyielding will to survive. Those were things the Empire could never control. Cole's voice cut through the tension. "You're not the only one who knows how to fight, Dirty Var." Without another word, the battle erupted. The Empire's soldiers, once so confident in their superiority, now fought in desperation. Gray and his team moved like shadows, swift and lethal. Marks and Harris held off the guards, while McAllister unleashed a torrent of experimental weapons that wreaked havoc on the Empire's technology. The energy fields that had once protected the room flickered and failed, leaving the Imperial officers vulnerable. But Var wasn't ready to concede. He stood at the center of the room, barking orders, rallying his soldiers. The fight was brutal, each moment teetering between life and death. Gray's every instinct was on edge, but his resolve never faltered. The Empire had thought them weak, had thought them easily crushed. Now, they were learning that humanity had a power they could never hope to overcome. In the final moments, it was Gray who faced Var. The two locked eyes, a battle of wills as much as weapons. Var lunged, but Gray was faster. With a single, decisive strike, Gray's blade pierced the Empire's heart. Var collapsed, his reign of terror brought to an abrupt end. As the silence fell, Gray stood over the fallen leader, breathing heavily, his body exhausted but his spirit unbroken. The Empire had been toppled, not by superior technology, but by the indomitable will of humanity. The rebels had won. Cole approached, clapping Gray on the back. "It's over, General. We did it." Gray nodded, but his gaze remained fixed on the room around him. "No, Josh. It's just beginning. The galaxy has been broken for too long. We'll help rebuild it, one piece at a time." The war was over. The Empire had fallen. Humanity had won. But as Gray stood amidst the wreckage, he knew their true battle had only just begun.